Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest, and I hope you had a wonderful Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, or whatever it is that gets you off. You know, and hopefully you had the balls out there to say Merry Christmas. And I want to bring my guest up, Walter Reddy, a member of a 400-year lineage of patriots, dating almost back to the. You've been here before the whole revolution, weren't you? Your family.
Yeah, early 1600s. Some of my family came over. Yep.
Now, Walter.
Henry Adams. Yeah. Few other patriots.
Well, I've got up here committees of safety. Now, you are you the original? I mean, this committees of safety goes all the way back to the Revolutionary days.
Oh yeah, Samuel Adams. Prior to the Lexington, you know, it was, I'm not the, you know, but it's on that concept of, they set up committees of safety back then, committees of correspondence also, but historically it's back in that period, 1760s, I think. But the principle is the same, you know, that hasn't changed. Would you like me to get into that a little bit?
First of all, I'd like for you to tell me what motivated you to do this. This is a little out of the line. I did the same thing. It was Waco with me was my turning point. I said I can't sit back and watch something like that happen on television again without doing something. So I went out and started the militias in New Mexico. But I did it in the governor's office. What part of the Second Amendment don't these folks understand? Militias, every able-bodied male in America between the ages 18 and 45, the governor could call all of us up.
Right. Well, that's under the current statutes, federal statutes, which was my understanding also at that time, early 90s, right after Ruby Ridge and Waco. I was living in Hawaii at that time. That kind of woke me up to that, and then that's really I got motivated to become more active again. So I was living in Hawaii at the time. I lived there for 4 years, and that whole movement back then I think woke a lot of Americans up. And I've come to understand it a little more since that time. And that statute, and thanks to Dr. Edwin Vieira, I've learned a lot more. But during that time, the early 90s, the whole militia movement was pretty strong. And what's really, I've come to understand it's a little more to it than that. It went back through what we've really studied a lot. I've studied, thanks to others like Dr. Edwin Vieira, is the colonial and state history of it and statutes, colonial and state statutes. It was actually 16 to 60 in most states. Massachusetts was 15 to 60. It was required, it was their duty to participate in this colony and state structure. So that's what we're trying to do today. We're trying to get the states actually to reinstitute this structure of safety for the states. And that's what committees of safety is about. We're hoping actually the state will put in a committee of safety again, and we've had a lot of good response from a lot of state legislators today. They were colonial and state statutes throughout our history from the early 1600s up until 1903, the Dick Act, and that's where the problem, I think, started. They started this national militia, which is, there's no such thing as a United States militia. Okay, these were state institutions that were formed from the community, from the town, county, and state level, from the bottom up. And that's actually what we're trying to do, working with some legislators. And I'd just like to say, Clayton, if your listeners haven't seen this new documentary that just came out this month, it's called A Noble Lie. I think what we really need to do is shatter that lie, and it goes back to Oklahoma City bombing and who the perpetrators really were in that. It's an excellent documentary. They've got the best one I've seen yet on it. But this whole lie, and I actually, I was living in New York State by that time when that bombing happened. I was listening to, like you probably too, Clayton, we were listening to William Cooper on shortwave back then, and
I was broadcasting with Bill Cooper on shortwave at that time period. Bill Cooper and I were putting our magazines together. He had Veritas, I had the Free American. We were going to combine our efforts, and they shot him 2 weeks later. Every one of my phones has been tapped. People have been shot that wanted to work with me, and anytime we tried to work together, they screwed it up. And that's why they were scared of me, is when the militia, they don't want us organized, they don't want us working together. Divide and conquer seems to be their technique.
Yeah, well, what happened, I was very active in New York State. I was working with a county legislator up there. Part of my family had moved to New York, as well as Connecticut, from Massachusetts in the early 1600s, and settled in Orange County, New York. I had moved there, and I had worked with some county legislators to reinstitute the Orange County militia. Now, my family, some of them were fought in the Revolutionary War in the Orange County militia, and this is going to be by county statute. And this is so. When the Oklahoma City bombing happened, I got a lot of bad press. I mean, ABC News and everything showed up at my house, and I mean, you know, I mean, it was a feeding frenzy on the militia at that time, and whatever. So they nothing's that word.
Walter, nothing's changed. When Gabriel Giffords was shot here in this staged shooting, my telephone rang within 1 hour. It was ABC News wanting to know if I knew the shooter.
Yeah, well, they ABC News, on New York ABC News, was saying, you know, I mean, they didn't, I had never met Tim McVeigh, but was from New York State originally, so he goes and puts out that maybe I knew him, you know? I mean, I never talked to him, I had no connection, that wasn't what I was about, and this, I can't highly recommend this more, this new film, A Noble Lie. They have the State Representative Charles Key in this. They had really credible witnesses that were victims that were in that bombing, that had seen Andrew Strassmeyer, planting C4, the explosives inside the building, McVeigh, being military special forces, and he was whatever. It was real. This film, I think, if we can get that out to the police and everything else, this will shatter their noble lie, and I think that's the first thing that needs to be done. So this could even be discussed again.
Any way you can send me information on that, links to it, whatever. I'll be happy to promote it and help sell it, because it was at Oklahoma City.
They can Google that. It's at anoblelie.com. It's put out by Free Mind Film, I believe it is. These guys spent a few years with documenting this and putting it together. Like I said, they've got General Parton.
I interviewed General Parton. He was.
So did I. I had him on a live TV show up here right after '96. And he was top in the Pentagon, Brigadier General, former Brigadier General with explosives, and he explained it. It blew from the inside out. The major damage to that was superficial damage, that decoy
and there were
truck
witnesses,
bomb or whatever.
There were witnesses in the basement, in the parking garage, that saw somebody planting what she thought was modeling clay. She thought it was modeling.
Yeah, it was C4. I mean, gray putty looked like, and with wiring and everything, telephone wire. She thought they were, and she's in this documentary stating it. And it's unbelievable. But the thing about it, once this noble lie is shattered, that's a quote from Plato. This noble lie it's what the elite use to promote their lie, their control. Once that lie is shattered, I think we can have an intelligent conversation about what the true constitutional militia really is. And but up until that point, you mentioned that M word, and people just automatically they go back and think of Tim McVeigh and dead babies, and
that's the program.
And blah blah blah.
That was also interesting that they placed that whole explosion on April 19th, 1 year after what happened at Waco. I mean, that was just to draw attention away from.
And also the shot heard around the world at Lexington, the start of the American Revolution.
Now, skip forward 10 years. That was used to install again, anti-terrorism law. And
that Bill Clinton was promoting at that time.
And by the way, I published Timothy McVeigh's death certificate. He was still in the U.S. Army when he was supposedly executed. Yes. And I'm not sure he was executed. I'm not sure he was executed.
That's on his death certificate. That's right, and they show that document in there. His death certificate. This documentary's got it all in there.
No BATF agents. No BATF agents were in their office on that day, but one of them happened to be standing across the street, and he was able to call into Dallas and tell Dallas that it was an ANFO bomb, because he had been working on those ANFO bombs, experimenting with the ANFO bombs over on White Sands Missile Range a little prior to Oklahoma City.
Well, there was even some whistleblowers like Carol Howell, who was ATF agent, that was at Elohim City. She was there, and she knew that Tim McVeigh, his handler was Andrew Strassmeyer, German intelligence, and she said, you need to pick this guy up now. Well, I think it was Larry Potts of the FBI were there. They had all prior knowledge, and it was a sting operation, supposedly, that went bad. But they had wired the Strassmeyer and others. They posed as like telephone guys. They were inside the building planting C4, and Larry Potts and was FBI, I think, in charge of that. Louis Freeh was the FBI director at the time. They did nothing to pick this guy up. Matter of fact, I believe the CIA got him out of here. 6 months later, he was still at large, and they never even questioned him. What else happened? Holder was Assistant Attorney General at the time. Okay.
This latest one, I have put out almost 25 years ago. I exposed George Bush's drug smuggling operation when he was CIA director. It was called Operation Watchtower, and it's interesting that flash forward, and now you've got the BATF. This is the same people that murdered 17 people in Waco, the same people that blew up Oklahoma City, and none of their people got hurt. And these are the same people that are supplying the drug cartels with automatic weapons.
Right.
I'm sorry, the drug cartels, in my opinion, and I certainly want yours, the drug cartels are the CIA. The BATF is supplying the guns to them, running the guns over there to try to blame Americans. So everybody can come back on the Americans.
His eyeballs and that.
That's
and
right.
He had a part in this, was at least complicit in this. The other thing that's interesting is that Whitewater, they, according to this documentary, they had a lot of the documents there at the federal building, the Murray building down there, and they ended up confiscating all the papers after the bombing. But you're right about that. That whole Whitewater, we know about George Sr., being drug smuggling with a pot of oil, and he was working with Clinton on that, bringing in the cocaine.
That's right. They were, Barry Seal, who I also happened to run into and meet, brought me some of the best Oaxacan I've ever had. He was flying it in to Mena, Arkansas, and Bill Tyree, who's featured in my book as in the story of Operation Watchtower. The George Bush used the CIA to go down into Colombia to build radio guide towers and they've guided 100 planes into Albrook Air Force Base. The cargo was cocaine. That's the first time the CIA threatened me before I even got in the Patriot movement. I ran that story in my motorcycle magazine.
Clayton, I'd like to just mention, there's a few the feds came in, the FBI came in and threatened their lives, the local police, and one of them, Terrence, forget his last name now, they murdered. He wasn't going along with the official version, and he had a lot of documents. He was the first police officer, Oklahoma City police officer there on the scene, rescued a number of survivors from that. A real hero, and he had all these documents that he was going to make public. And the night he was killed, he was planning on having dinner with his friend, and he was on the phone. The feds were following him.
Was it Yeeky?
And he said, well, I'll meet you as soon as I lose these feds that are behind me. And he's found later, he had handcuff marks around his wrist when they found him. His throat was slit. He was shot from the top of his head, came out through his jaw, with no powder burn, so it was far enough away, and they claimed it was suicide, right? And there's another Oklahoma City police officer that was featured in this documentary testifying, you know, he wasn't going along with it, and the FBI had threatened his life and his wife. You know, you're going to end up dead, and your wife is too if you keep this up, you know. So that's what we have.
That was Terry Yeakey, Y-E-A-K-E-Y,
yeah.
And his family are still not really happy with his death. There's a saying they said in Oklahoma City, if you don't want the Terry Yeakey done to you.
Right. Well, our local police have to see what they're being fed all of this BS from Southern Poverty Law Center and ADL and everything.
Southern Poverty Law,
but they need to know the truth, what's really going on, because they're the ones who are really the terrorists. You know, the other side that are. I mean, by the way, we know that they were at Elohim City too, Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah, Southern Poverty Law. They listed me when I was working with a presidential candidate, George. Charles Collins. When I was working with Charles Collins and running for president in 1996, they listed me and him in their false patriots. Charlie Duke in Oklahoma City, or in Colorado too, and Charles Key in Oklahoma City. They're going after any state legislators that are going against this whole, you know, one world government plan. Now I started Free American Report on the New World Order ever since George Bush used that term. Now we can see, you know, the New World Order coming into view.
Well, I'll tell you, this is what we're dealing with. These criminals and they've threatened, I know some of these state legislators, just for thinking about reinstituting this state militia structure, they're threatening their lives too for even talking about it. So we have a real criminal, seditious organization group that are trying to overthrow our lawful government. And
that's so hard to get people to understand. You know, I mean, their propaganda is so good. The ADL, Southern Poverty Law, they listed me in armed and dangerous, and you know, it's really hard to get support now. And people aren't even reading right now. I mean, everybody I talk to, Barnes and Noble's closed down. Nobody's buying any books.
Well, this documentary, I can't you know, speak highly enough about it, but I think this really needs. I mean, if you know some cops that are really, especially just the general public, state legislators and local police, that you know that are honest guys, because we do have them in these. You know, I mean, not all of our government are criminals. But they need to get this information and know the truth. And anyway, I think that will go a long ways to shatter this lie about who really was behind this. And these perpetrators are still at large, and they're going to, you know, if we can get this out to enough people, the right people, I think we could avert another terrorist attack, and then being blamed on anyone, you know, who believes in our constitutional law. And,
well, what is your take on 9/11? I referred to it on the air as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning due to Larry Silverstein's raking in $2 billion off a 3-month investment, and they tried to kill him.
Well, we know he was called that morning not to go in, right?
Right.
I mean, he's even stated that on PBS and everything.
And his daughter didn't go. They had breakfast. They had breakfast in the Top of the World restaurant every morning, except 9/11.
Yeah, and for a few months before, they knew they'd shut down some of the things because there were supposedly these workmen in there that were wiring the thing, you know, blah blah blah, you know. And yeah, well, 93 too, you know, 93 bombing. It was another one of these FBI sting operations that went bad. That was even New York Times, you know. I mean, we know the same story over and over again. So, yeah.
Well,
we don't know. We don't have all the answers, but we know it wasn't just these so-called, you know, patsies from some cavemen hiding in Afghanistan or something that were able to put all this together.
Let's take a look. Let's take a look what's happening in Arizona right now. Now supposedly we got a committees of safety coming up here, but the people that are supposed to be putting on the committees of safety here don't. I don't think they like you very much. And
who is that?
Well, let's see. I think Gary Hunt was just on my show the other day.
Gary Hunt.
And,
do you remember William Cooper talking about Gary Hunt, these John Does?
I remember.
You know, do you remember in Media Bypass with a picture of Gary Hunt from running from the federal building? He had something in his hand. Yeah, Gary Hunt. He was, according to Cooper's intelligence. I mean, and I spoke to Gary Hunt right after that bombing. He's the only person I knew that thought it was a good thing that they blow up the federal building. So I don't know whether he's an agent provocateur, but yeah.
But now he recommended an oath keeper by the name of Mike Fry, and he said Mike Fry was going to be putting these committees of safety together. I've had Mike Fry scheduled on my show 3 times, and he's never shown up.
Yeah, well, we formed committees of safety, the committeesofsafety.org. We're not connected with Gary Hunt's whatever, committees.org, committees, I don't know what, he has something different, but they've, guess, using the same name. It's not what we're trying to do, it's working with our state legislators.
It happened in the militia. There were the tri-states militia. They were going to put New Mexico together with Colorado and a couple other states. And
working with state legislators?
Well, I started the New Mexico militia in the office of Governor Gary Johnson. We met with Gary.
I know Johnson. Gary. Yeah,
good man, and running for president. I kind of lean towards Ron Paul simply because Ron Paul's got more organization than Gary does. But he would do the right thing.
He's a good man, though.
He would abolish the law if he was president, and if Ron Paul's president, and they abolish the laws against victimless crimes, stop this whole drug scam that's going on.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, it would. I mean, the drug gangs and the organized criminals, gangs. I mean, don't want to see it legalized. Take their profit away, just like during the Prohibition days.
That's right.
They weren't in favor of legalizing alcohol.
Yeah, they did the same thing they're doing the same thing to us they did to our ancestors. They made your grandfathers and great uncles into criminals for growing their own fuel, for making the alcohol and running
and everything. Yeah, right. Anyway, what we wanted to, I know we talked before the show there, Clayton, about what we've got, this new project. It's getting off a little bit onto another topic, is transparentvote.net. And we want to, what we're doing in Iowa and New Hampshire about having a transparent vote counting, which they do have at all those 1,784 precincts, but it's the reporting of the vote that AP has a monopoly